The film began with a high school student called Seun. He was the smartest student in his classroom. He had reserved and introverted personality. Every day, he spent most of his time to study. He didn't have friends at school. His classmates hated him because he was too smart. Because he didn't have friends, nobody respected him at school despite of his great achievements. On the contrary, his classmate called Young Bin was very respected. When Seun received an award as first place winner in a mathematics competition, nobody clapped their hands. But when Young Bin received an award as third place winner, the whole class clapped their hands. Young Bin was a troublemaker in his class, but he was quite smart. There were many students in their classroom who were bullied by him and his group. They also bullied and robbed some money from other students. Young Bin tried to bully Seun when Seun was studying. Young Bin was jealous of Seun because Seun defeated him in the mathematics competition. Even though Seun was an introverted student who didn't have friends, he was never afraid of Young Bin and his group. He didn't even care when Young Bin threatened him. The school baseball team came to their classroom. They were looking for a student called Suho. They wanted to take revenge on Suho for beating up their friends. Even though they tried to beat him up together with baseball bats, Suho managed to defeat them because he was an ex-fighter of MMA. When Seun came home, he gave his certificate of appreciation to his father. His father was proud of him, but Seun wasn't proud of himself because he was lonely even when he was with his family. Seun only lived with his father since their parents got divorced. He lacked of affection from his parents. His father was very busy with his works. Meanwhile, his mother was a teacher who was teaching at a distance. It was difficult for Seun to see his mother. He could only watch his mother's videos every day. Because of his family problem, Seun became a reserved and reclusive person. The next morning, as usual, Seun came early to school. He saw Suho sleeping in their classroom. They had physical education class that day, but Seun couldn't find his tracksuit. He believed Young Bin was the one who stole it. As the consequence, Seun had to wear his uniform in physical education class. Seun was the top student in all classes except physical education class. He wasn't really good in physical education class. After physical education class was over, Seun confronted Young Bin and his group. He asked Young Bin to leave him alone. Young Bin and his group felt humiliated by Seun, so they choked and threatened him. Suddenly, a teacher came and interrupted them. Young Bin and his group stopped what they did. They said that they were just joking around. There was a transfer student called Bum Suk in Seun's classroom. He moved from an elite high school. Bum Suk refused to admit that he came from a wealthy family because he didn't want to be taken advantage of. Seun came and told Young Bin to move from his desk. Young Bin was annoyed by him. Seun took a pen to protect himself in case Young Bin attacked him. Suddenly, Suho told Young Bin and his group to shut up. He was mad because his sleeping was disturbed by them. At night, as usual, Young Bin and his group hanged out in a club and ordered a drug. They did that every day. Young Bin met the drug dealer who was also his cousin. He asked him what would happen if the fentanyl he had ordered was applied to human skin. The drug dealer told him that it would cause confusion, dizziness, blurred vision, nausea, and vomiting. The next day, the class had an examination. As usual, Seun had prepared himself well. Young Bin came late to school. He asked Bum Suk to go with him because he said that their homeroom teacher wanted to meet him. Turned out, Bum Suk was brought to school canteen. Young Bin asked him to apply the fentanyl to Seun's neck while they were taking the examination later. Bum Suk agreed to do what Young Bin told him because he was afraid of him. When they were about to take the examination, Bum Suk tapped Seun's neck from behind. Bum Suk said that there was a fly on Seun's neck. At first, Seun was mad at him, but after the teacher called him, Seun focused back on his examination. While Seun was taking his examination, his vision suddenly started to become blurred. He also had difficulty to stay focused. He left the classroom to go to the bathroom. When Seun returned to his classroom, he realized that there was a fentanyl on his neck. He suddenly slapped his cheek. The whole class was surprised by him. They were paying attention to him. Seun kept slapping his cheek so he could stay focused. After the class had finished taking the examination, they began to check their answers. Seun realized that he had one incorrect answer. He got frustrated because of it. He got up from his chair, brought a pen, and attacked Young Bin relentlessly. He also stabbed Young Bin's friend with his pen. Young Bin fell from his chair with a face that was covered in blood. There was nobody in the classroom who dared to intervene Seun. When Seun tried to step on Young Bin's face, Soo suddenly stopped him and pushed him away. He thought that it was too much. Seun was annoyed by him. He took a chair to fight him. Unfortunately, Soo managed to avoid his attacks. Suddenly a teacher came to their classroom. Because of that incident, Young Bin had to be admitted to hospital for treatment. Seun was taken by his teacher to apologize to Young Bin's parents, but Young Bin's mother kept scolding him because she was furious at him. Seun told her that he was drugged with a fentanyl by Young Bin while they were taking an examination. At first, Young Bin denied that the fentanyl was his. but Si-eun proved what he said by rummaging in Young Bin's bag. A box of fentanyl was found in his bag. Young Bin's mother was shocked to see that. Finally, the school decided to transfer Young Bin to another school. They also agreed to keep this incident of drug use by their student as a secret to keep their good reputation. When Si-eun returned home, he didn't say anything about what happened at school that day. Si-eun's father suspected that Si-eun had gotten into a fight, but he didn't care about it. He thought it was a normal thing that happened among teenagers. The next day, two of Young Bin's friends approached Si-eun angrily. They asked him to meet them after school, but without a single fear, Si-eun asked them to meet him right at that time. They didn't need to wait until the school was over. With angry faces, Young Bin's friends followed Si-eun to a bathroom. Si-eun closed the bathroom's door so nobody could see them. They didn't realize that Si-eun had brought his favorite weapon, which was his pen. As Si-eun was walking toward them step by step, they were getting intimidated by him. They remembered the incident where Si-eun was getting out of control. They couldn't move their body when they remembered it. Apparently, Si-eun didn't want to attack them. He only told them to leave him alone. When Si-eun came out of the bathroom, all of his classmates praised him for defeating Young Bin and his group. Si-eun was annoyed by them because suddenly they were being friendly to him. All this time, they had ostracized him and pretended like he didn't exist. Young Bin was visited by his cousin. Suk-dae warned Young Bin to not overdo anything. Young Bin asked Suk-dae to beat up Si-eun. He would pay him if he was willing to do it. At night, when Si-eun was heading home, he saw Soo working part-time. Apparently, apart from being a student, Soo also worked part-time as a food delivery courier at a restaurant. After school, he would go to work so he could earn some money to survive. Since he lost his parents, he only lived with his grandmother. But after he finished working, he didn't come home. He chose to sleep at school instead because he would come late to school if he slept at home. After Si-eun found out about Soo's story, he didn't wake him up every morning anymore. He appreciated his effort, so he let him sleep for more before everyone came. Si-eun and Soo became closer to each other since then. However, Si-eun still didn't get used to be open with other people. Young Bin met Suk-dae to talk about the job he offered him yesterday. Suk-dae was a member of a collection agency who lent money and collected debt, so he was down to do any high-paying job. After school, Bum-suk tried to apologize to Si-eun for what he had done. He offered himself to accompany Si-eun to go to another school for a tutoring, but Si-eun ignored him. Suddenly, Si-eun was stopped by Young Bin and Suk-dae's gang. They took Si-eun with them. After Bum-suk saw that, he reported it immediately to Soo-hoo. At first, Soo-hoo didn't care because it wasn't his business. He also had to go to work after this. But after Bum-suk said that he would pay him double of his salary, Soo-hoo changed his mind. He was looking for Si-eun immediately. In a quiet alley, Si-eun was being intimidated by Suk-dae and his gang. Since Si-eun was a person who had always analyzed and calculated his actions, he managed to fight them back. But when Si-eun dropped his guard, he was getting attacked again. Young Bin used this moment to take revenge on him by beating him up relentlessly. He also tried to break Si-eun's hand so he couldn't study. But suddenly, Soo came to save Si-eun. He managed to defeat Young Bin and his friends with his skills. But their fight wasn't over. Suk-dae asked Soo-hoo to fight one by one. When Young Bin and his friends saw Si-eun alone, they wanted to beat him up again. The situation was getting worse. Young Bin wanted to attack Si-eun with a bottle. Soo couldn't stop him because Suk-dae kept attacking him. Luckily, Bum-suk suddenly came to save Si-eun. Suk-dae finally left and decided to let Si-eun and his friends go. Meanwhile, Young Bin just stood there and realized that he had lost again. Since that incident, Si-eun and the others became closer to each other. Soo took Bum-suk and Si-eun to the restaurant where he was working. He told them to help him working because they made him late to go to work. They spent their night together by having dinner at that restaurant. But as usual, Si-eun still didn't get used to spend time with people. Suk-dae's boss, who was called Gil-soo, was mad because of the incident. He didn't like if Suk-dae took another job. He punished Suk-dae by hitting his hand with a block of wood. After that, Suk-dae met Young Bin to ask him to bring Si-eun to him. Si-eun encountered a member of Suk-dae's gang called Young-hee who was stealing something at supermarket. Si-eun ignored her and pretended like he didn't see that. When he was about to leave after purchasing an umbrella, Young-hee was being friendly to him. She asked Si-eun to go to a restaurant with her. Si-eun couldn't do anything but to accept her offer. Young-hee confessed to Si-eun that she began to have a crush on him. She also asked for Si-eun's phone numbers. Gil-soo was collecting payments of debts from a high school student who owed him some money. That student gave his mother's car as a loan guarantee because he was unable to pay off his debts. Even though he had given Gil-soo a car as a loan guarantee, Gil-soo still threatened him to kill him and his parents if he didn't pay off his debts in 3 days. The next day, when Young Bin packed his things in the classroom, he asked Si-eun to have a conversation with him. Turned out, Youngbin wanted Si-eun to be a court witness to testify that he didn't own any fentanyl because he didn't want to be put in a youth detention center. He told him that he was the only hope for his parents. Si-eun felt bad for him, so he agreed to do what he wanted. Si-eun were heading to the court with his friends, but Youngbin took them to a car park of a building instead. Si-eun and his friends suspected him because they didn't go to the court. Apparently, Youngbin had lied and tricked them to meet Gil-soo and his gang. Gil-soo asked them to pay him $15,000 because he didn't have health insurance to cover for Suk-dae's broken hand. But Soo didn't remember that he injured Suk-dae's hand severely. Gil-soo was the one who broke Suk-dae's hand and then blamed Soo for it. He did it so he could get some money from him and his friends. Gil-soo told them to pay him in 3 days. If they couldn't do it, they had to lend money from him to pay him. We could see how sly and manipulative Gil-soo was. He even threatened to kill them if they refused to do what he told them. After that unwanted meeting, Si-eun and his friends were followed and watched by Gil-soo and his gang every day. Si-eun called Young-hee to ask for an explanation about the problem he was facing. He hoped that Young-hee could give him an important information. They finally agreed to meet at a restaurant. Young-hee told Si-eun about who Gil-soo was. Apparently, Gil-soo was a type of a person who would do anything for money, including murder. Young-hee told Si-eun to pay Gil-soo if he didn't want to be in any danger. She also told him that Gil-soo were friends with many gangsters, so it would be hard to run away from him. Bum-suk was stealing his father's watch so he could sell it and have some money to pay Gil-soo. Finally, 3 days had passed since Gil-soo threatened Si-eun and his friends. They had a meeting in a room. Bum-suk managed to collect $15,000 from selling his father's watch, but he told them that he got the money from his father. Si-eun and Soo were mad at him because they didn't believe that Bum-suk's father was willing to give him that much money. Even though they had the money, they refused to give that money to Gil-soo for free. They decided to call the police instead. Si-eun told them about the important information he got from Young-hee last night. Apparently, Gil-soo had an illegal gambling site for minors, especially for high school students. People would receive $50 for free for each account they registered on Gil-soo's gambling site, which was being operated overseas. Young-hee said that the gambling site was a fraud. The players would win and receive many bonuses for several first games, but after they got addicted to it, the site owner would use their addiction to take their money and defeat them in every game. Where there were gambling sites players, there were bound to be Gil-soo's gang. When those players ran out of money, Gil-soo's gang would approach them to lend them money so they could keep playing on the gambling site. As the consequence, the players would owe them money and couldn't pay their debts off because they had lost all of their money on the gambling site. It was one of Gil-soo's evil strategy to exploit children to get addicted to gambling, so they could lend money from him and gave him their valuables as loan guarantees, such as cars, gold bars, etc. Young-hee also told Si-eun that Gil-soo put his valuables such as transactions, drugs, etc. in a strongbox. Because of that, Si-eun wanted to call police and bring them to that place. With all evidences inside of that strongbox, Gil-soo would get arrested by the policeman. After school, Gil-soo and his gang had been waiting for Si-eun and his friends. Soo said that he would meet Gil-soo by himself. He planned to ask Gil-soo to take him to his office to talk about Gil-soo's gambling site. When he arrived there, he would tell Si-eun about his location so Si-eun could call and bring the policeman there. At first, Gil-soo was surprised that Soo knew about his gambling site. Soo said that Suk-dae's cousin, Young Bin, told him about it. Gil-soo finally took Soo to his office with him because he had no option. Before they left, Young-hee told Gil-soo that she would stay at school to wait for Bum-suk and Si-eun. After that, Young-hee met Si-eun to give him the address of Gil-soo's office. Si-eun didn't realize it sooner that Soo didn't have to go with Gil-soo to get Gil-soo's address. Bum-suk was worrying about Soo. He wanted to follow him with a taxi. Si-eun let him go because he wanted to see if Young-hee gave him the right address. Suk-dae interrogated Young-hee for knowing Si-eun and revealing such an important information to him. Young-hee told him that she was sick of Gil-soo. She planned to call the police on him. She said that she couldn't live under Gil-soo's pressure forever. Soo arrived at Gil-soo's office. He gave Gil-soo's address to Si-eun immediately. It was the same address as the one that was given by Young-hee. Soo walked inside of the office. Since Gil-soo always kept his guard up, he asked Soo to give him his phone. He had been suspecting that Soo had planned something. Soo refused to give his phone. His head was hit very hard with an iron stick that he fell from his chair. Gil-soo finally found out about Soo's plan to call the police on him. After he found out about it, he packed his things and left that place immediately. Bum-suk arrived there and encountered Gil-soo, who was trying to run away. Bum-suk didn't know what had happened, so he tried to give Gil-soo the money. Because the situation had become worse, Gil-soo ignored the money and took Bum-suk with him to leave that place. Si-eun was heading to Gil-soo's office. As he and the policeman arrived there, they didn't find anyone. The policemen put off their search because of that. They also realized that they didn't have an arrest warrant, so they couldn't proceed with their search. Because the policeman didn't help him, Seon broke into that house by climbing the wall and breaking the door. He was surprised to see blood on the floor. He thought that it was Suho's blood. He tried to call Suho on phone, but Suho didn't answer his call. Seon was shocked to find that the transactions, drugs, and Gil-soo's other valuables in the strongbox had been taken by Gil-soo. Suk-dae got a new problem. Gil-soo found out that Suk-dae and Young-hee had conspired with Seon against him. Gil-soo threatened to sell Young-hee's brother called Sung-chan if Suk-dae and Young-hee didn't come to Mangadong. Suk-dae decided to meet Gil-soo. He gave his bank card to Young-hee so she could find a hotel to hide. But Young-hee didn't want Suk-dae to meet Gil-soo alone. She wanted to go with him. She asked Seon to download an application that enabled him to share location, so Seon could track Suk-dae and Young-hee's location. Gil-soo and his gang had been waiting for Suk-dae and Young-hee. Apparently, they had taken Bum-suk and Suho as their hostages. Seon was heading to Young-hee's location. Since Gil-soo had found out about Young-hee's conspiration, Suk-dae challenged Gil-soo for a fight. But because Suk-dae's hand was still severely broken, he had difficulty in fighting Gil-soo. He was attacked relentlessly by Gil-soo. Young-hee couldn't help Suk-dae because she was seized by Gil-soo's gang. Gil-soo wanted to kill Suho and Bum-suk, but suddenly Suk-dae got up and attacked him. Despite he had a little difficulty, he still fought Suk-dae. He was defeated by Gil-soo, who used a knife to attack him. Suddenly, Young-hee helped Suk-dae by hitting Gil-soo's head. But as a woman who didn't have as much strength as Gil-soo, she couldn't fight Gil-soo when he choked her. Luckily, the sound of siren from police car was heard. Gil-soo and his gang ran away quickly. Seon came and told Gil-soo to surrender because the policemen had surrounded them. Gil-soo and his gang came back after Seon helped Bum-suk and Suho to escape. Turned out, the siren sound only came from a phone. Gil-soo's gang and Seon's group got into a fight. Suk-dae and Young-hee were about to run away from that place when they saw some policemen arrive there. Turned out, Seon used the siren sound audio to trick Gil-soo and his gang, so they would think that the policeman wouldn't come. A policeman tried to arrest Gil-soo and his gang with his gun. Meanwhile, another policeman was chasing Suk-dae and Young-hee. Unfortunately, Gil-soo managed to escape from them. Seon chased Gil-soo by himself. Seon was chasing Gil-soo until he finally found him. They got into a fight. Despite Seon didn't have as much strength as Gil-soo, his attempt to fight Gil-soo managed to slow Gil-soo down. Suddenly Suho came and saved Seon. Suho and Gil-soo got into a fight. Despite Suho was an MMA fighter, he had a little difficulty in fighting Gil-soo by himself. Seon and Suho managed to defeat Gil-soo. They finally caught the criminal who had been terrorizing many students. Suk-dae surrendered himself to the police. He told Young-hee and Sung-chan to run away. This criminal case would be handled by a lawyer who happened to be the assistant of Bum-suk's father. That lawyer said that he wouldn't discuss about this case with Seon's parents, but he would tell Bum-suk's father about it. Since Bum-suk came from a highly respected and wealthy family, anyone who had harmed him would receive serious punishment. The lawyer asked Bum-suk to beat up Gil-soo as he pleased. He didn't care if they were in a police station. Bum-suk didn't want to beat up Gil-soo. Gil-soo mocked him by saying that he was the weakest among his friends. Gil-soo told him that Suho and Seon didn't consider him as their friend. Seon came out of the police station and saw Young-hee waiting him outside. Young-hee wanted to apologize to him and Suho. They went to hospital to visit Suho. Seon told Suho that Bum-suk's father wanted to keep the case a secret. It seemed like Bum-suk's father wanted to handle the case as if they were the one who caught Gil-soo and his gang. Seon didn't care about that. What important to him was that Gil-soo and his gang had been arrested. Besides, Bum-suk's father had paid off Suho's hospital costs. Apparently, Bum-suk's father was a member of parliament who was called Jin-won. He was a highly respected person. As her apology, Young-hee offered herself to accompany Suho at hospital. She could sleep on an empty bed. Young-hee said that she and Seon were dating. When Seon came home, he felt lonely again. Nobody there asked where he had been. He decided to return to the hospital. He also brought Suho's favorite food with him. Suho was surprised because Seon cared about him despite of his cold personality. At Bum-suk's house, Bum-suk's father scolded Bum-suk because he got involved with the police. He didn't like it because it could damage his good reputation. Then, he punished Bum-suk by hitting him with a golf stick. Seon's schoolmates admired Seon and his friends because they had caught Gil-soo and his gang. Since that incident, Seon and his friends became closer to each other. They wanted to hang out together. Seon told Bum-suk that Young-hee had become their friend and lived in Suho's house. Suho said he would ask Young-hee to hang out with them. Bum-suk felt like he was ignored because of Young-hee's presence. He felt like he was excluded from the group. He was mad when he found out that Suho didn't follow him back on Instagram. Suho even followed Young-hee even though they had been knowing each other for just one night. Since Young-hee joined their group, Suho talked to Young-hee more than he talked to Bum-suk. Bum-suk felt like Young-hee pretended as he didn't exist. Because of that, Bum Suk didn't enjoy their time together. When they went to a karaoke bar, Bum Suk became more unhappy, so he left their room to purchase some drinks to refresh himself. He stumbled upon some kids who had bullied him from his previous school. He hid from them because he wanted nothing to do with them. When he returned to their room, he took his anger out on Young-hee because Young-hee answered the phone call from his bullies. Bum Suk didn't like Young-hee even more, especially after he felt like Soo chose to be sided with Young-hee instead of him. His bullies came to their room. They were bothered by Si-eun's unfriendliness, so they chose to leave and call Bum Suk for another time. Si-eun didn't know who they were because Bum Suk didn't tell him anything about them. The next day, Bum Suk was sleeping in the classroom. He was disturbed by a noise from some students in his classroom. He told them to be quiet, but those students laughed at him. Bum Suk felt humiliated by them, so he approached them angrily. He became more mad at them after they said that Bum Suk had become conceited since he joined Si-eun and Soo's group. Si-eun and Soo tried to calm him down. Soo was surprised when Bum Suk asked him to stop putting his hands around him. Since that incident, Bum Suk's mental state became unstable. He was also terrorized by his bullies who kept calling him on phone. He skipped classes for days and didn't tell anyone about how he was doing. Si-eun and Soo decided to visit Bum Suk's house to check on him. They were astonished by Bum Suk's grand luxury house. The rumor that Bum Suk's parents were rich confirmed to be true. Bum Suk told them that he wasn't a biological son of their parents. Apparently, Bum Suk was adopted when his father became a politician. Bum Suk told them why he disappeared and skipped classes for days. Since he encountered his bullies from his previous school, those bullies kept calling him on phone and asking him to meet them. He got frustrated because of it. He even experienced flashbacks of his past traumatic incident when his bullies beat him every day. It was also one of the reasons why Bum Suk moved from his previous school. After Soo heard about Bum Suk's story, he told Bum Suk to call his bullies. He wanted to make them regret what they had done and apologize to Bum Suk. Soo and Si-eun went with Bum Suk to meet Bum Suk's bullies at a karaoke bar. With all of his courage, Bum Suk walked into their room and asked them to apologize to him. Bum Suk's bullies laughed at him after they heard what he said. They even refused to admit what they had done to him. They pretended like they had a good relationship with Bum Suk. But after Soo threatened them, they finally apologized and regretted what they had done half-heartedly. Suddenly, Bum Suk slapped one of them. They were provoked by that slap. Bum Suk got out of control. He took a microphone and tried to hit them with it. When Soo saw him, he stopped him immediately because they came to that place to make them apologize to Bum Suk, and not to take revenge on them. Bum Suk's bullies were surprised to see Bum Suk got out of control. Si-eun told them to stop calling Bum Suk from now on. Bum Suk and Soo got into a fight because Bum Suk didn't like that Soo stopped him from taking revenge on his bullies. Bum Suk also told Soo that he was mad at him because he felt like he was treated as a subordinate by Soo. He felt like Soo didn't consider him as a friend because Soo always bossed him around. Soo disagreed with what Bum Suk said because they had always acted like friends all this time. He also said that he had helped Bum Suk for so many times. Soo was angry when Bum Suk said that he would pay him for everything he had done for him. Si-eun intervened them both and let Bum Suk go. Bum Suk wasn't mad at Si-eun. He never got angry with him and always respected him. Finally, he decided to go home alone. Turned out, his bullies still kept calling him on phone and trying to find where he was. On his way home, Bum Suk encountered Young Chan and Taehan's group. At the same time, his bullies found where he was. Luckily, Young Chan and his group chose to rob those bullies instead of Bum Suk because they knew those bullies were students of an elite high school. Those bullies were afraid of Young Chan's group who were intimidating them. They couldn't do anything except doing what they wanted by transferring their money to them. Bum Suk just stood there and watched them. Suddenly, he beat up one of his bullies, who was the leader of the group, and then ran away. Taehan and Young Chan were happy to see Bum Suk got out of control. Bum Suk took his anger on his bullies for the bullying they had done to him, the abuse from his father, and the exclusion from his friends. After that incident, Bum Suk joined Young Chan's group. They drank together in a club. Bum Suk's new friends were fond of him when Bum Suk paid all of their bills. Bum Suk felt like he finally found friends who respected him. He was also followed by them on Instagram. He thought that he had found real friends. He decided to unfollow Soo's Instagram account. The next day, Bum Suk came late to school because he got drunk last night. Si-eun tried to talk with him, but Bum Suk ignored him. Bum Suk chose to talk with Young Chan's group instead. Young Chan's group thanked him for paying for their drinks in the hotels where they slept with some women. Apparently, Bum Suk still got the money that he earned from selling his father's watch. Because Si-eun thought Bum Suk had changed, he confronted him about it. At first, Bum Suk said that nothing happened, but finally, Bum Suk told him that he was mad at Soo for treating him like a subordinate and not a friend. Bum Suk hanged out again with Young Chan and his group in a club. This time, they also hanged out with Young Bin and his schoolmates. Young Bin were glad to see Bum Suk. He introduced Bum Suk to his female friends and told them that he was a member of Parliament's son. After those girls heard that, they flirted with Bum Suk. Youngbin also introduced Bum-suk to a fighter at his school named Woo-young. Then, they talked about Soo-hoo. They were mad at Soo-hoo because he always acted like a boss and looked down on others. Youngbin wanted to take revenge on Soo-hoo. Soo-hoo picked Se-eun up from a tutoring. He taught Se-eun to work as a delivery courier. Then, Se-eun talked about Bum-suk. He thought that Bum-suk was being used by Young Chan's group after they found out that Bum-suk came from wealthy family. He thought that they befriended Bum-suk just for his money. But Soo-hoo thought differently. He thought that Bum-suk was the one who used Young Chan's group. As they became closer to each other, they would do anything that Bum-suk wanted them to do and make him a popular student. Day by day, Bum-suk became closer to Young Chan's group. Bum-suk felt like he was really admired and respected by his new friends. Bum-suk even moved to another desk to sit closer to Young Chan and Taehan. Se-eun was worrying about Bum-suk after he saw it. He believed that Bum-suk wasn't a troublemaker. He thought that Bum-suk only did that because he felt so lonely. Se-eun told Young Chan's group to stay away and stop taking money from Bum-suk, but Young Chan's group ignored him and said that Bum-suk was the one who wanted to do those things. At lunchtime, the students stood in line in order to get their lunches. Suddenly, Young Chan's group came and jumped in line. Soo-hoo was annoyed by them. He warned Young Chan and his friends to stand in line. Bum-suk just stood there and refused to do it. Soo-hoo was mad at him. He slammed Bum-suk to the ground. Se-eun told him to stop. Bum-suk left that place with hard feelings. He asked Young Chan to find a person whom he could pay to beat up Soo-hoo. Young Chan recommended him to hire Woo-young, Young Bin's classmate. From some videos that had been uploaded on internet, they could see that Young Chan was really good in fighting. It was also said that Woo-young would join UFC. Finally, Bum-suk was taken to Woo-young. Bum-suk would pay Woo-young $1,000 if he could beat up Soo-hoo. He wanted Woo-young to do it on Saturday when Soo-hoo would have birthday. Woo-young accepted his offer and then left that place. Taehan told a story that Woo-young was once beaten up by Soo-hoo in a competition in the past. Young Chan believed that Woo-young would win this time. They planned to injure Soo-hoo so he would have difficulty in fighting Woo-young. They cut the brake cable of Soo-hoo's motorcycle while he was working. As they expected, Soo-hoo was unable to ride his motorcycle properly that he finally had an accident. From that accident, Soo-hoo had to walk with a limp because his leg got injured. Soo-hoo believed that Bum-suk was the one who did this, but he didn't say anything to Se-eun. Today was Saturday, which also Soo-hoo's birthday. Se-eun and Young-hee prepared everything to surprise Soo-hoo. Bum-suk tried to call Soo-hoo on phone to ask him to meet him, but Soo-hoo didn't answer his call. Bum-suk sent some messages to Young-hee. He said that he wanted to meet Young-hee to give Soo-hoo a birthday gift. Bum-suk told Young-hee not to tell anyone about it because he wanted to surprise Soo-hoo. Young-hee didn't tell Se-eun and Soo-hoo that she went out to meet Bum-suk. At first, Bum-suk was being nice to her, but suddenly he smiled because his plan worked out. He planned to take Young-hee as a hostage so Soo-hoo would come to meet him. Se-eun and Soo-hoo were waiting for Young-hee who still hadn't returned. Se-eun accidentally saw Soo-hoo's phone in which he received some messages from Bum-suk. Bum-suk sent an address for Soo-hoo to come and meet him. He also said that he had taken Young-hee as his hostage. Se-eun realized that Young-hee was trapped by Bum-suk. Se-eun replied Bum-suk's messages by saying that he would come there. After that, he deleted the chat and told Soo-hoo that he would go outside. He didn't want Soo-hoo to know anything about it. Se-eun came to Bum-suk's location alone with a wrench in his hand. Everybody was surprised to see Se-eun instead of Soo-hoo. After Se-eun found Young-hee, he asked her to run away with him quickly. Se-eun fought Young Chan and his friends with the wrench he brought with him. Meanwhile, Young-hee called the police. Young Bin was glad to see Se-eun because he wanted to take revenge on him, but he was still unable to defeat Se-eun. Se-eun took a crowbar and wanted to fight all of them with it, but suddenly Woo-young came and attacked Se-eun. Se-eun was unable to fight Woo-young back even though he had a crowbar. Young Bin wanted to use this moment to attack Se-eun. Bum-suk tried to stop him and told him that Se-eun had nothing to do with them. Bum-suk said he didn't hold grudges against Se-eun. Young Bin didn't care about what he said because it wasn't only about Soo-hoo, but also about his personal grudges for Se-eun. Eventually, Se-eun, who had been lying weakly on the ground, was beaten up relentlessly by Young Bin. Young Bin's friends joined Young Bin to attack him. It was too painful for Bum-suk to watch it, so he left that place. Woo-young asked Bum-suk to reschedule his meeting with Soo-hoo. He also asked him to transfer the money to him because he had defeated one person. Bum-suk didn't even ask him to beat up Se-eun. The sound of siren from police car was heard. All of them ran away immediately from that place, except Se-eun, who was lying weakly on the ground. Soo just realized that he had slept. He found that his friends still hadn't returned to his birthday party. Se-eun was taken to an ambulance by the policeman who came to that place. Young-hee told the policeman about what had happened. Suddenly, Se-eun woke up from his sleep. He told the policeman that he was all alone and it was only an accident. He also told Young-hee not to tell Soo-hoo anything about this incident. Se-eun called Bum-suk on phone to warn him to stop what he was doing. Seun had to be hospitalized because of that incident. He remembered when his father and his mother got into an argument when he was a child. Apparently, his father didn't want Seun in his life. Seun was mad at him when he found out about it. He didn't like his father since then. He still didn't like him even though he lived with his father now. Seun didn't tell his father about the truth of the incident last night. He just told him that he fell from a staircase. But his father knew that Seun got into a fight with other students. He grew impatient with him and scolded him for behaving recklessly. Suddenly, he got quiet after Seun told him about his feelings. Seun asked his father since when he cared about him. At home, Bum-suk was mad at himself. Because of him, Seun had to endure violent attacks from Young Bin's group. He stayed in his room and refused to go to school. Because of that, his father sent someone to watch over him. He planned to transfer Bum-suk to a school in Philippines. Suhu still attended school like usual. He was clueless about what had happened, but he sensed that there was something wrong because Seun disappeared and didn't attend school. He also didn't see Bum-suk at school anymore. Suhu tried to call Seun on phone, but Seun didn't answer his call. Seun told Suhu that he didn't attend school because he had a family problem. Suhu asked Youngie why Youngie and Seun didn't return to his birthday party. Youngie didn't answer his question. She only apologized to him. Suhu came to Seun's house, but there was nobody there. He was heading home while wondering about what was actually happening. Finally, Suhu asked Jin-chan and Taehan about where Bum-suk was because he had no option. They told him that they didn't know where Bum-suk was because they were unable to contact him. Suhu said that he wanted Bum-suk to give him some money to fix his motorcycle that had been damaged by Bum-suk. They were surprised that Suhu knew that Bum-suk was the one who damaged it, so they asked him how he found out about that. Young Chan's group was talking about Seun who didn't attend school because of what they had done that night. Suhu heard about their conversation. Finally, Suhu beat them up and asked them to tell him about what happened to Seun that night. Because Young Chan couldn't take his beating anymore, he told Suhu everything about what had happened that night. After Suhu found out about it, he visited Youngie again to ask where Seun was being hospitalized. Youngie told him that Seun would return home tonight. Suhu came to Seun's house. He was glad to see Seun. He didn't tell Seun that he knew about what happened to Seun. Seun hid his wounded hand from Suhu. Suhu came to Seun's house to tell him that they would have examinations in one day, so he hoped Seun could attend school. Bum-suk received another punishment from his father. His father was furious with what Bum-suk had done. He was ashamed with him. He asked Bum-suk not to tell the public that he was his father. Because Bum-suk had had enough, he decided to leave his house that night. His assistant tried to stop him, but Bum-suk ignored him. Bum-suk ran away from home with a taxi. His assistant took a picture of his taxi so he could track him. In the taxi, Bum-suk found that his friends had called him on phone for several times. He received some messages from Suhu. Suhu was with Young Bin. Suhu was punishing Young Bin. He also asked him where Bum-suk was. Young Bin told him that he didn't know. Suddenly, Suhu received a phone call from Bum-suk. Bum-suk asked him to meet him in a gym. Bum-suk also called Woo-young on phone to ask him to prepare himself because he would fight Suhu soon. Suhu came to meet Bum-suk in the gym. He saw Yeon-chan, Taehan, Bum-suk, and others there. Apparently, Suhu came there to apologize to Bum-suk. He told Bum-suk that Bum-suk was supposed to take his anger out on him, and not on other innocent people. Bum-suk rejected his apology. Suhu was mad at him because of it. After that, Woo-young called Suhu. He asked him to get into the boxing ring and have a fight with him. Suhu was surprised to see Woo-young there. They had met before in a competition where Woo-young was defeated by Suhu. Suhu accepted Woo-young's challenge. He asked him to give him 1 minute to do warming up by beating up everyone there. After Suhu finished warming up, he began his fight with Woo-young. Woo-young recorded them in a video. He swore that he would take revenge on Suhu by defeating him this time. In the beginning of the fight, Suhu and Woo-young were even because they both had good fighting skill. But Woo-young knew that Suhu had a wounded leg due to a motorcycle accident, so he focused his attack on the left side of Suhu's body. Suhu had a little difficulty because of his wound, but he managed to push Woo-young down with his smack. Taehan cheated in the game by pulling Suhu's leg. Suhu lost his focus that he was kicked hard by Woo-young. Suhu laid weakly on the ground because he had a kick in his head. Bum-suk used this moment to beat him up relentlessly. Yeon-chan and Taehan, who had been sick of Suhu this whole time, joined Bum-suk to beat up Suhu relentlessly. The assistant and lawyer of Bum-suk's father came to pick Bum-suk up. He forced Bum-suk to go home with him. Suddenly, everyone was surprised and panicked when they found out that Suhu didn't breathe anymore. They escaped quickly from that situation except Yun-han and Taehan because they were stopped by Bum-suk's lawyer. Bum-suk's lawyer asked them to testify to this problem in front of the policeman. Bum-suk regretted what he had done. He cried because he thought that Suhu had died. Young-yi and Seun were looking for Suhu because they hadn't heard anything from him. Since Suhu found out about the incident that night, Young-yi and Seun suspected that Suhu took revenge on Yoon-chan's group, but they didn't find Suhu anywhere. Eventually, this problem would be handled by Bum Suk's lawyer. He wanted to keep this problem as a secret, so he told Yoon Chong, Tae-hun, and Woo-young to tell about what had happened according to the narrative that he had created. The narrative would go like this. They were taking an exercise together. Suddenly, Soo passed out when he took a break by himself. They had deleted the video that had been recorded by Woo-young. They had also taken CCTV so there would be no evidence of what had happened. Bum Suk's lawyer also pretended to be Soo-woo to tell Si-yoon that Soo-woo was alright and was busy taking an exercise. Bum Suk received another punishment for what he had done. His father was speechless with rage when he found out about what Bum Suk had done. He threatened to kill Bum Suk after he finished his school in Philippines and returned home. But Bum Suk didn't care about what his father said. He was worrying about Soo-woo. The next day, the school had examinations. As usual, Si-yoon came early to school. It was his first day of attending school after the incident that night. He was worrying about Soo-woo because he hadn't heard anything from him. Soo even didn't attend school that day. Si-yoon couldn't stay focused while he was taking his examination. As the consequence, he had many incorrect answers. But Si-yoon didn't worry about it this time. He was worrying about Soo-woo more than he was worrying about his examination. After he finished taking his examination, he got news from Young-hee. She told him that Soo-woo was being hospitalized. She cried when she said that Soo-woo's condition was critical because he was in coma. Apparently, Soo-woo hadn't died. Yoon-chan thought he had died because he was panicked that night. Soo only fell into a coma, so he was admitted to hospital for treatment. After Si-yoon found out about that, he left his school and went straight to hospital to visit Soo-woo. There was only Soo-woo's grandmother in Soo-woo's room. She was sad because Soo-woo hadn't woken up. Si-yoon began to cry when he saw his best friend laying weakly on bed. Bum Suk had been staying in his room. His lawyer came to tell him that Soo-woo didn't die, but only fell into a coma. There was still hope to save Soo-woo. Bum Suk's lawyer asked Bum Suk to keep the incident that night as a secret or they would kill Soo-woo. They needed to do that to keep Bum Seok's father's good reputation as a member of parliament. The next day, Si-yoon went to Ji-sung High School. It was Young Bin's new high school. He came to that school to find Young Bin. When Young Bin arrived in his classroom, suddenly Si-yoon came and attacked him by hitting his head repeatedly on his desk. He also stabbed Young Bin's shoulder with a pen. Si-yoon asked Young Bin about what happened that night. He asked if Bum Suk was the one who did it. Young Bin said he didn't know since he wasn't there. It was because his fingers were broken after being injured by Soo-woo that night. Before Si-yoon looked for Bum Suk, Young Bin told him that he only knew a little about what happened that night after he watched a video that was sent by Woo-young. Si-yoon found out about what actually happened from that video. Even though Young Bin had nothing to do with it, Si-yoon still beat him up. After that, Si-yoon was looking for Woo-young. He tried to beat him up with an iron stick in his hand. Unfortunately, Woo-young had expected his movement since he was a fighter. They finally got into a fight. Woo-young looked down on Si-yoon because Si-yoon didn't have any fighting skill. Si-yoon chose to keep fighting him. He remembered about what Soo-woo taught him if he got into a fight. Unfortunately, what he had taught couldn't be learned quickly. Si-yoon was attacked repeatedly by Woo-young, but with his intelligence, Si-yoon managed to have the upper hand. He used Woo-young's shoelace to fight him back. He even managed to avoid Woo-young's smack. Woo-young smacked a barbell instead and injured his hand. Si-yoon used this moment to hit Woo-young's foot with a barbell. Woo-young tried to find an excuse about what happened that night, but Si-yoon refused to forgive him. He broke Woo-young's foot with a barbell again. Bum Suk and his father were heading to Bum Suk's school to say goodbye and inform them that Bum Suk would move to another school abroad. But suddenly, Young-hee came and stopped them. She asked Bum Suk to take accountability for what he did to Soo-woo. Instead of apologizing to her, Bum Suk told Young-hee that he did that because Young-hee came to his and his friend's life. He and his friends used to be happy and close to each other, but after Young-hee came to their life, Bum Suk felt excluded from his group. The teachers at Bum Suk's school had been waiting for Bum Suk and his father because they knew who Bum Suk's father was. After that, Bum Suk was taking an examination. Meanwhile, his father was pretending to ask about the student who got severely injured. The teachers said that there was a student who got severely injured. They told him that student got injured because he passed out when he took an exercise at a gym. Bum Suk's father was glad to hear it because nobody knew that his son was the one who did it. While everyone was taking an examination, Si-yoon came to school and took a fire extinguisher. He came to his classroom with a uniform that was covered with blood. His classmates and teacher were surprised to see his appearance. Suddenly, Si-yoon attacked Tae-hun with the fire extinguisher. Bum Suk looked at him without a single fear. Yoon-chan tried to help Tae-hun, but Si-yoon hit his head with the fire extinguisher. Yoon-chan fell unconscious. Si-yoon continued to attack Tae-hun. After he took revenge on those two people, Si-yoon approached Bum Suk. Bum Suk felt helpless and regretted about what he had done. He told Si-yoon to beat him up as he pleased, but Si-yoon couldn't attack Bum Suk because he still considered him as a friend. Finally, they burst into tears. Seon left Bum Suk on the floor without throwing a single punch on him. All students at that school were terrified by Seon. Some teachers tried to stop him. Seon took his anger on the window because he hated how the school chose to keep this problem as a secret. They didn't do anything to help his friend who was in coma. After that incident, Seon returned to the hospital to visit Soo-hoo, who was still in coma. He imagined that Soo-hoo had woken up from his coma and told him that he had overreacted to his problem. Then, they apologized to each other because they failed to take care of themselves. Finally, Bum Suk attended a school in Philippines. Meanwhile, Soo-hoo was still in a coma. Young-hee decided to leave Seon and Soo-hoo because she realized that she had ruined their friendship. At first, Seon was going to be put in a youth detention center because of what he had done, but after Bum Suk's father saw the video that showed how Soo-hoo fell into coma, he decided not to say anything about it. He just made sure that there would be no school that would accept Seon in Seoul. Apparently, there was a high school that would still accept Seon. It was Eunjang High School. Finally, Seon moved to that school. He was accompanied by his father and mother. His father told him that what he had done before wasn't entirely his mistake. This was the situation at Eunjang High School. It was a low-ranked high school because the students there were troublemakers. The school didn't forbid their students to have tattoos. Seon introduced himself to the class. When he took a sit, one of his classmates approached him. It seemed like he was the leader of a gang in that classroom. Seon chose to ignore him. That student was mad at him. Seon stared at him coldly. That student felt defeated by him. There was a student with tattoos on his body who was watching Seon because Seon had defeated Woo-young.